Hey folks, Bob Paff here. We're about to go live in probably about 10 minutes. I've gotten text messages from a lot of you and emails from you the last couple of days. Appreciate the attention. I appreciate the shares. We've got Gloria Larkin and Teresa Lancaster in here with us in the studio. We're going to talk about the keepers, but I'm going to try to elevate it above and beyond that. I'm going to share some very private and very personal information with you. Myself, Shane, thanks for tuning in from California. Really need you to, you probably can't hear my guest on Facebook Live, but go to the App Store and download the WCBM 680 AM app and tune in that way. It's really easy to do. You can call us at 410-922-6680. If you're out of the area, use the 800 number, 922-6680. But we've got a riveting show for you tonight. You know, again, it's about time we focus in on this. You've seen my post today. We've talked about the Me Too movement. We've talked about that and how it relates to all of this. And I've got my thoughts and I've got my theories behind it. But we're going to talk to people who were there and who lived through this and who are stronger as a result of it. Right, Teresa? Gloria? And so we're going to try to get to the bottom of this. I have reached out to the Archdiocese. I spoke to their spokesman finally yesterday, and I've invited the Archbishop of Baltimore on the show. I want him in the studio because what I want to be is fair and balanced. This is not one side or the other. I'm going to let you make up your minds about this, but I'm just really presenting the facts and introducing you to the folks who lived through this horror. A lot of you are probably aware of this stuff. John Mertzbacher and Eileen Weissman and some names that you probably know out there. My mom was a member of the Our Lady of Good Counsel Parish. My whole family is from Locust Point. Again, I've got some personal stories that I'm going to share with you, but stay tuned. We're on the air, and like I said, probably less than about 5 or 6 minutes. Give us a call if you've got something to talk about, and I know there are a number of you that are out there that will be calling in. And I hope to be able to take your calls, but this flies by, and you guys know that. So tune in. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about the Archbishop, and this is a scathing commentary that came out written by a seminarian in the Wheeling, Charleston, West Virginia area, and bringing into question his credibility. Is he the person to oversee what happened in West Virginia with this? Michael Bransfield is the bishop in West Virginia who... you know, has had some allegations and about abuse against him. And so, anyway, stay tuned. We'll be right back with you in just a little bit. All right, guys. We'll all need a cocktail after this.
We're all here getting ready to go. Stay with us. Hi, Gemma. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Linda. We also have... Say hello.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. WCBM News Time, 6:03. I'm Michael Filippelli of the 680 WCBM.
We're going to be quiet for a little while until we get the show started. I'll try to keep it up as much as possible. We'll see how it goes.
Hey folks, thank you. I know the Facebook Live is wonderful because we've got you from all over really all over the world. Ireland and Scotland and California is not all over the world, but our friends out there in Florida and Ernie Santiago, I forgot to call him. I forgot to call my ex-father-in-law because he's a big fan. He's tuning in. So anyway, Ernie, I hope you're listening down in Florida, you and Tina. All right, we're coming with you in just a little bit, as soon as Michael Filippelli finishes the news.
Tomorrow at noon at Mount Union Stadium in Alliance, Ohio, in their first trip to the NCAA Division III Tournament Semifinal. Then at 3 p.m.
I probably will go through some of the basics because I'm not going to assume. You can't in this business. You can't assume. You have to treat it like it's a blank slate. You can't make the assumption that anybody knows anything. And people do when they're in my business. They make that assumption. But I want to treat it like people have never heard of Father Joseph Maskell. There are going to be people out there who've never heard of the keepers. And so I'm going to go through, and if they have, great. They're hearing it again, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of you out there who are listening to me right now, PK Hill wants to call in, not letting you through. Maybe try that 410-922-668. If you can't get through, folks, on the 800 number, then I suggest you're going to have to dial the long distance, and I apologize for that, 410-922-6680. Try that and see it. Hello from Rhode Island, Scott McKay. See, we're folks from all over the place, and I'm so grateful for all of your support out there.
was get USA Insulation. So right now, when you get whole home insulation,
Once we go, and this, I mean, it just really, you're going to kind of be like, you'll need a cocktail after this, but not a bad thing. What's that? Right, Elizabeth? Flies by, doesn't it? Well, it's funny because I'll get people in here, like when I had the secretary in here, he's like, can I leave after the first one? I said, yeah. Then the people are like, can I stay?
It's being recorded right now.
What's that?
It's being recorded right now.
On the southwest out of the Beltway. The crash at B&A
So
Boulevard going to be stop and go from 95.
Traffic right
all the way
now
down to
is
97 and 97.
not being recorded right
Oh,
now.
Michael, he's gone. Yeah.
Still have delays in
Yeah, he's gone.
Park Heights on the interlude, and those go right over through Towson.
John Bykowski, Jade, are you guys out there?
Gemma, have a bourbon for me,
Have a-
everybody.
It's going to be a 2-cocktail kind of night, folks. We want to hear from you, so I can't promise I'm going to be able to. There are some nights that we're so busy and the topic is so exciting that we can't take all the calls. That's a nice problem to have. We'll do the best we can. Please call, and you can tell Anita what your question is, but it just flies by. Nick Stone, thank you.
39 degrees, Saturday night, 29.
Who do we have on next week?
We've got a local real estate guy coming on. I may pull in one of my friends who wrote a book, have him on. But I want to be fluid. We got to do that. We got to do that show, the one about the twin sister that was murdered. The Jody LaCour. Here we go, guys. We're gonna.
WCBM and WCBM.com
Teresa?
are not necessarily those of the owners, management, employers, and advertisers of WCBM, but they should be.
The Bob Paff Show is brought to you by Bob Paff.
Here we go, folks. Are you ready? Here we go.
This is Talk Radio 680, WCBM, and worldwide at WCBM.com. It's time now for the Bob Paff Show.
Hey, folks, it's Bob Paff here. Thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be a huge show for us. We've got the folks. If those of you who are out there, you may or may not be familiar with the Netflix series The Keepers. The Keepers came out on May 19th, 2017, and I've got one of the original plaintiffs, Teresa Lancaster, who was one of the original plaintiffs who brought the charges against the Archdiocese of Baltimore and this Father Joseph Masco. I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about that. And then joining me in the studio is Gloria Larkin as well. I want to do a couple housekeeping things as we always do. Those of you who are out there listening to me, you know that this is a variety show. It's not a political show. We want to bring you interesting topics. We want to bring you interesting people. We want to know what you want to hear. There's so much political stuff out there, folks, that I get sick of hearing it, and I know you don't want to hear it anymore. So we want to bring real, meaty, substantive things to you, and I think we're doing that. So I want to hear from you. You can call us at 410-922-6680. But let me do just a few things. Always, always grateful to our sponsors. And we want to thank the folks at Cipriana, Maria and Vaso. We want to thank Tony and Cheeto at THB. We want to thank Taylor Paff at Fairway Mortgage Corp. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And interestingly enough, ladies, the statistics that I've seen, that people who have suffered abuse, this is sexual abuse at the, by the Catholic Church, at least 100 people have taken their lives. Is that right? And I'm sure that number's low, but I'm sure others have become drug dependent and alcohol dependent and major depression, PTSD, and all of those things. The National Suicide Prevention, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, is my cause. It's my personal cause. And they're wonderful and they support us. And so I want you, if you're out there and you're struggling with mental illness, if you're struggling with suicidal ideations or thoughts, or you know someone who is, please reach out. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. There is help. We know the struggles are real. We've all been there and we've had these things. So I want you to reach out. I want to talk for just a couple of minutes. We're going to get right into our show, and it's going to fly by tonight, folks. So please give us a call. I want to talk about the funeral this week of George H.W. Bush. And it's hard for me to even imagine, and ladies, you can chime in on this, that anybody missed that. I mean, I was glued to the television.
It was compelling.
Right? And you know what, Gloria? I didn't really know why. I voted for George Bush. I did. And I remember that he jokingly talked about his command or lack of the English language and the whole thing about broccoli. What a self-deprecating man. But I tell you what what I was most moved by is George Bush, the husband, married to Barbara for 73 years, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and what it spoke to me about is the lack of character and integrity and transparency, we're going to talk about that tonight, that we're missing in this country. And so I felt a huge void. I felt as I look over at Randy with his Vietnam veteran hat on, here was a man who, 17, 18 years old, was a fighter pilot. A couple of stories that he told that I was just so moved by. Let's face it, George Bush's father, Prescott Bush, was a senator, and he grew up very affluent. He didn't want for anything. He went to the Andover School, and he went to Yale. But he said when he was an officer, he was in charge of reading the mail for all of the enlisted men. And it's kind of funny because he talks about he learned so much about sex and all these, because, they're writing all these letters, oh, honey, I miss you. But he also, the other thing about it, he said, you know what? I discovered what it meant to be the average guy. Here was a guy who money was never a problem. He said these people were struggling to pay their bills. They were struggling to pay the rent. They were struggling to make their car payment. And George H.W. Bush had no idea because he came from a different world. And I talk about this. I think the country, quite frankly, is run by an elite group, economically, educationally, all that. We're run by a small group of folks. Money talks. And money has power. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the Me Too movement and all of that. But you know what? And he also said, too, he believes that God spared him. He was a very religious man, and so I had that connection with him. He really believed that God spared him because he had other things planned for him. And I think the three of us sitting here right now can talk about that as well. You're a voice for survivors who lived through this and survived this, and that's why we're here. And I'm so grateful and so honored to have you on my show. But for those of you who are out there, and it seemed like it got to a point where, George Bush's funeral lasted the whole week. It was incredible. From D.C., flying here, and then he flew home, and then the train, and this and that. But so moved, and of course, George W.'s speech about him and missing his dad and breaking down, and then the jokes, Alan Simpson, I think, is wonderful. And what did he talk about? Hatred corrodes the container that it's carried in. Did you hear that? Yeah. Folks, hatred corrodes the container that it's carried in. I've always loved Alan Simpson. But man, did he bring it home with that. So if you're out there and you're carrying this hatred around, it is corroding your body. So anyway, I was just so touched and so moved. And we're going to miss that guy because, he's the end of the great generation. I'm going to take us, we got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to chat about this and we're going to come back and dive into our story. But folks, it's a huge loss for this country. And we need to get it back. We need to get back to caring about one another. We need to get back to character and integrity. We can disagree. You know what I tell you I was so moved by? I didn't even think of the whole thing as being political. It was we just lost a great American, didn't we? Right. And it didn't matter. It really didn't matter if you were Republican, if you were Democrat, if you were independent. Now, I watch the media, and I tell you, I've come full circle with the media. They are an elite group of people as well. The Dr. Ben Sass's book that I read talks about he refers to them as the illiberal media. Most of them, 94% of them have advanced degrees. 30% of Americans have college educations at all. And these people lived in two East Coast, very liberal cities, being New York and Washington, D.C., and yet they speak for us. So we listen to the commentators, and we're supposed to, they have a different perspective. And so I was really moved by so much of this, so much of what I saw, and I say that because people talked about Trump's posture. Did you see him when he walked into the pew? Right. Who cares? Folks, it wasn't about Donald Trump. It wasn't about Barack Obama. It wasn't about Bill Clinton. They've all got their baggage. They've got their stories. It was about George Herbert Walker Bush. And it was a beautiful thing, and I'm glad that I was glued to my... I felt guilty for not going down to Washington, I got to tell you that. So it was incredibly moving, and Mr. Bush, thank you for your service, and we are going to miss you. There's a huge void and a huge gap and a huge hole in our hearts because we need more people like that. There just aren't enough of them around, and I don't see any of them on the horizon. I'm trying to get Ben Sasse, the senator from Nebraska, to run for president. And he told me, I saw him the other day, and he's like, I'm scratching this out. I wrote it in the book, Sasse for president. Folks, we're going to be back in a little bit. Stay tuned. We're going to talk to Teresa Lancaster and Gloria Larkin when we come back. We got folks who want to call in. We're going to talk about the keepers. We're talking about the sexual abuse that's been going on in the Catholic Church, arguably for centuries. You know, this goes way back to, you know, the Julius Caesar times and the original popes, and it's really a form of modern day human trafficking is what this is. So we're going to be back with you just a little bit. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show on WCBM.
I looked at the statistics on people who have been assaulted who commit suicide. It says 33% of rape survivors said they've contemplated suicide.
Okay, so slow down. Slow down. So 33% of rape survivors
said they had contemplated suicide, and that 13% of like other sexual assault survivors say they have contemplated suicide.
of other sexual assault.
Other than rape.
Okay, wonderful. Good job.
And a lot of congestion on Southbound 97 from the Beltway down towards
She didn't commit suicide.
I'm Mark
She went
Williams
through
on Talk Radio
what she went through, but She
680
just
WCBM.
thought so little of herself the rest of her life. that she-
Right. I'm going to go through the specifics. I'm going to talk about the keepers and all that. I'll introduce. I think we're right back, okay? And then I'm going to ask you, walk us through it. You know, can I start with you?
Please start with
And then I'll start.
The Bob Paff Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and worldwide at WCBM.com.
Hey, folks, you're back live on the Bob Paff Show. Thank you so much. I'm always grateful. My heart is very full for those of you who are supporting me, those of you who are listening to me, those who signed on from day one. I called up and said, I need your support, I need your sponsorship, and you said I'm in. And I'm so grateful for you. I'm going to remind you again, we're going to talk about the keepers. We're blessed, and I look at it that way. And I want to talk to you guys about your faith, and I want to talk to you about religion, because my faith has gotten me through the worst times of my life. And I separate faith from men in robes and men, you know, and the clerics, shall we say. It's a whole different thing. I think our relationship with God is one-on-one. At least it is with me. And so I don't look into the eyes of any man or any woman to sort of lead me through that. The relationship with God is one-on-one from my perspective, right? Because it's different for all of us.
Yeah, and I respect everybody's belief. And, my belief doesn't exist, actually.
Well, and we'll talk about that. Let me go through, let me give some of you who are out there who have never heard of the Keepers, and we talked about this before, there are people out there. It came out, again, in May 19th of 2017. Folks, I encourage you to watch it. Go on to Netflix. I can only watch the first 3 episodes. It made me physically ill, and I'm going to tell you why in a little bit, why this is very personal for me. It made me sick, and I had to turn it off, and I recognized some names in there. And those are my friends out there. You know some of these names too, folks, but it made me sick and I had to go back and watch it. The documentary explores the murder of Sister Kathy Sesnick, who disappeared in November of 1969 and was discovered in 1970, I think buried in a grave, leaves thrown over her, basically discarded in a field. I think, right? Okay. All right, Teresa. Theorized that her disappearance had something to do with the sexual abuse occurring in her school. She knew too much. So Kathy Sesnick, a 26-year-old nun, if I'm not mistaken, right around that, she was young, was killed because she knew too much. Because this, and let's go into it. Father Joseph Maskell is accused of sexually assaulting a confirmed 16 students while they attended Archbishop Keogh High School, and this occurred in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Maskell died in 2001. Now, Maskell, as I recall, and we're going to get into the settlements and all these issues. Maskell had, a brother or somebody who was in the police department or fire department?
His brother was a police officer.
His brother was a police officer. So I remember from the series, this guy was well protected.
Very well protected.
Right. And I remember a part 2, Teresa, that he basically sold the girls, to the police department, to the fire department, right?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. I experienced that firsthand.
Oh my God, folks! If you're hearing this, let's go on a little bit about Maskell. He died in 2001. Now, since Maskell's death in 2001, the Archdiocese of Baltimore has paid $472,000 in settlements to those who came forward. I believe if you saw Spotlight, the movie about the Archdiocese of Boston, I know they sold real estate totaling about $65 million. They've paid out millions and millions and millions, and you guys might know that, how much the Archdiocese of Boston has paid out. This is a huge problem for the church, and they're trying to hold on to their assets. Lancaster and Weiner, 2 of the original plaintiffs, filed a lawsuit against Maskell in 1994 with 30 corroborating witnesses. However, the statute of limitations was over and the cases were essentially thrown out.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all right. Although unconfirmed, it is fathomed, listen to this, folks, that Maskell assaulted 35 different women. 35 different women. The Archdiocese has cooperated fully with authorities in the 1990s when Maskell was first called out. However, they originally did not find enough evidence against him to remove him from the priesthood. And this is the issue, because what's been happening is these priests get slapped on the wrist, if you can call it that. They're put on desk duty, and they're moved around. In a Maskell's case, and I've got the list. We've got about a minute left. Maskell, Sacred Heart of Mary, St. Clemens, Keogh, Our Lady of Victory, Annunciation, Holy Cross, St. Augustine. And then ultimately, this Father Maskell fled to Ireland at the end of 1994 to avoid the sexual assault allegations in law school. So he got out of town.
Yes, he did. He ran out of town, and he was in charge of counseling young people in Ireland.
Right, he set up a practice in Ireland. I'm right reading that.
Yes, and I have gotten correspondence of people from Ireland that were abused by him.
That were abused by him. So the abuse continues. So he's caught. He's brought out in the public, and you know, all these accusations, and then he moves and he just continues. The predator that this man was his body exhumed? Because didn't they try to?
Yes, they examined his body to compare the DNA from him, I believe, to a cigarette butt found at the scene of Sister Kathy's. Where they threw her.
Because obviously, you know, the connection was there. And it seems to be, I've seen the series, folks, that you would think that this guy had something to do with this. Brother was a cop. You know, it was easier back then to get rid of people, and then suddenly she dies. So we're going to come right back to you. We're going to dive into this a little bit deeper. Please give us a call. I've got people holding on the line right now. Give us a call at 410-922-6680. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show on WCBM. We'll be right back.
Boston paid out
Ways to increase your sales,
What's that?
motivate your team, improve your relationships, or become a more
Boston?
effective, persuasive,
It's paid out.
and passionate
Yeah,
speaker.
I have the
You're
list
doing
of
the
some
same
of
old things and
the
expecting a
bigger
different result.
cities that have
Let
had
Bob
to pay out
Paff and
because
his
of
communicating to win strategy help you become the best you can be.
85
Yeah, give me the big.
million.
So
552.
Boston is 85 million.
552.
Here's the other thing I'm going to ask you guys, and I want to bring this up. And when I posted earlier, you look at the Me Too thing, and I'm going to compare this to the Me Too movement because I don't think you're getting the attention you deserve. And part of it is because the Me Too movement was these big-time celebrities who said, "Oh, so Weinstein or Matt Lauer assaulted me." Well, and then they can hire the best lawyers and they can do all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, it's interesting to me when it just dawned on me how comparing that there really is no comparison, because you folks, a lot of people are suffering in silence who don't have the means, who don't have the attention, and then you're fighting the church. So you're fighting this big institution to be
That has unlimited money.
unlimited money.
And unlimited
and dessert options. Check us out at THB.
I want to make sure, the two of you, if there are things that you want to talk about, if you want to make sure that we cover, you can bring them up. You can just, you introduce them or whatever, or you tell me what it is now. But I want to talk about this is David and Goliath.
Yes,
It is.
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of
What's
death
that?
in the United States. But there's something we can do about it. Each year,
We got
thousands
somebody
of people
named Mary who's
participate in
calling.
the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness community walk,
That's me.
raising awareness and letting people
Oh, the
know
walk.
they're not
We got to
alone.
change that. We got to
Join
put a
us on
commercial.
November 3rd at Crash
November
Inner
3rd.
Harbor as we walk to fight suicide. Funds raise to support research, education, advocacy, and support for those affected by suicide. Remember, suicide prevention starts with everyday heroes like you. Register and donate today at afsp.org/Baltimore.
Savings is linked to actual term, depends on your energy usage profile. Savings not guaranteed. Message and data rates may apply. Please don't text and drive.
As the seasons change, so does your energy bill.
I'm going to go right to a call, but what I've been doing now with the calls, because sometimes people will stay on and then I got to cut them off, and I do because I have to. But a lot of times we take the call and then we drop it. So we take the call, get the question, and then we drop them. And then we answer the question.
With
All right?
Energy, you can lock in your electricity supply at a fixed rate for up to 36 months. That's right. You can lock in your electricity.
What about New York? I mean, we've got New York, Chicago.
So
Now's the time to take advantage of
Yeah.
this incredible
it's
offer.
been,
Because right now, energy prices are near
over,
all-time lows. And with Elega, there's no hassle of switching utility providers. You'll still
So the Catholic Church has paid out over $1 billion.
Unpredictable
well over $1
energy
billion.
bills can catch you off guard, but they don't have
Some of
to.
the bigger
Lock in
ones,
your
Los
guaranteed
Angeles
low rate
has
today
paid
with
60
Elega.
million.
To get your free quote, just text value to
Portland,
47
Oregon has
47
paid
47 to
53
get your
million.
free
Portland,
quote.
Oregon?
Text value
Yeah.
53 million?
47 47. That's VALUE to 47
I'm looking
47
for
47.
Florida. There's it's hard to see on
Back
there.
in the 70s, when I was young, life was all
It
about
doesn't have every
surfing, rock
city
and roll.
on this.
And who was 60 million again? I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
60 million was Los
Very
Angeles.
quickly.
by the time I'd found a steady job, got married, and had kids, I had to start thinking about retirement. So I invested in municipal bonds by Henyon and Walsh to earn a tax-free income. Now I can retire like a young man and invest like an old one. Life is cool again, dude.
Retire like a 20-year-old. Invest like a 60-year-old. With municipal bonds by Henyon and Walsh. Call 1-800.
I'll take the call. We'll take the call. I'm going to talk about some of my issues with all this stuff about transparency because I get the Catholic Review, and then we'll open it up to you guys. Okay? I just want to make sure that I'm framing this thing properly. Are you guys okay? So if I say to you, can you respond to this article? Was Archbishop Lori a credible source?
Absolutely.
You okay with that?
Yeah, no problem.
Want to do that? I'm going to give that to you, Gloria. I'm going to give that to Gloria. Okay? Here we go.
And now more of the Paff Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and worldwide at WCBM.com.
Hey folks, you're back with the Bob Paff Show. We're live here in the studio with Teresa Lancaster and Gloria Larkin. Teresa was one of the original plaintiffs. I talked to somebody earlier today, and the stories that I've heard are absolutely horrific, of girls being held down on the floor, of principals watching teachers. This John Mertzbacher thing, that guy ought to, I know he's in jail, 2 life sentences, but he ought to have 5 life sentences. I mean, he ought to just have a flogging in there. It's unbelievable to me. But let me walk you through. We're talking about the keepers, and we're talking about the church's transparency and their accountability. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Archbishop Lori, and Gloria and I were just chatting whether or not she believes that he is the person who can, now they've shipped him off to, not shipped him off, but he's in charge of West Virginia. We're going to talk about that. I want to get into it. I want to give you some statistics out there if you're listening to this. We've discovered that the Catholic Church has paid over, are you ready for this, folks? $1 billion in settlements all over the country. We've got some of the bigger states. Boston, we talked about the movie Spotlight. The city of Boston has paid out $85 million in sexual abuse settlement claims. Los Angeles has paid out $60 million. You ready for this one? And this kind of surprised me. Portland, Oregon has paid out $53 million. And I understand we were talking earlier that the Keepers has had a whole new life down in South America because obviously this is a big problem down there as well. And so, folks, I want you to hear that again. $1 billion has been paid out to date. I talk about this, and I think about it with the whole Me Too movement. There's a difference here, folks. Listen, I said it again. If you're a reporter and you were hanging out with Matt Lauer and he did something or said something appropriately or touched you on the leg, you can hire the best lawyers that money can buy. These folks can't. I mean, we were talking about young girls who went to Archbishop Keogh. My mom went to Our Lady of Good Counsel. This abuse down there with Mertzbacher makes me sick. These were not families. These are families like me, blue, gray, no collar. These weren't professionals. These are not movie stars. These are not celebrities. These are everyday people who felt safe sending their little girls and their little boys, let's not forget the little boys that were raped and abused and everything else, off to school and trusting them with these priests and with these nuns. Now, Teresa, I'm coming to you. The commentary in today's paper, can Lori hold the church accountable? Now, how does a guy like the Archbishop of Baltimore hold the church accountable and now go into West Virginia and try to hold them accountable when, in fact, in 2002, he had his own issues in Bridgeport, Connecticut? So, Gloria, is it equivalent to the fox and the chicken coop? Is that how you would say that? Can Archbishop Lori be trusted credibly to oversee what's going on?
Oh, it's their typical playbook. They cannot be trusted at all to be able to monitor themselves or to actually have any transparency whatsoever. What they will do is deflect the problems. They'll deny the problems. Teresa's experienced that firsthand. And then it frankly just makes me disgusted.
Well, I think the thing too, I heard, and I don't know if this is true, I saw a video that when you're made a cardinal, you're one of the vows or whatever is the vow of secrecy. So this is an old boys club.
Absolutely.
And so they've got, and I equate this in a large way to politicians or lawyers. My friends are out there who are lawyers. We're not going to go into the whole lawyer thing, but the lawyers make all the rules. And I know you're a lawyer, and that's, Teresa, I'm glad you're a lawyer. The lawyers make all the rules. And so when you've got people that are governing themselves, the priests are regulating themselves. Exactly. Teresa, how can they do that? How can they do it effectively?
It can't be done. Someone from the outside has to come in and monitor the situation, because their history of covering up the bishops, the priests for hundreds of years, it just can't be done in-house. You need someone brought in as independent contractor.
And have they ever done that? Has anybody ever come into your knowledge from the outside? Did Baltimore do it when you were dealing with this?
No.
No.
Not at all.
So they've been regulating their own. You're put up against them. And I'm sure if my lawyer friend, I'm sure they lawyer up. So if you're sitting there, right, in a meeting, whether it's a settlement conference or whatever, they're well protected.
Very well protected.
And insulated, so it's not just protected. You actually only talk with lawyers.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a wall of lawyers. That's what I.
So the transparency, and I look at the Catholic Review. We're going to run out of time again. I get the Catholic Review, folks. I'm a Catholic boy. I get the Catholic Review, and I was struck by what I heard this summer when the Archbishop was walking around talking about transparency. Is the church being transparent?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. An example I brought in tonight was Father Foxhoven in Ohio was.
Hey, folks, we're going to come right back. Teresa, we're going to pick up right on that point. I told you guys it would fly by. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show. We'll be right back.
He's the one that doing 2018.
On the outer loop of the Beltway on the southwest side between 95 and 97.
They say there's no new cases, but they've been transparent. There's zero tolerance. Well, this priest, just this year, 2018, was arrested and sentenced to 12 years in prison for 3 counts of sexual battery on a 16-year-old girl. He got her pregnant. And you can have this article.
Really?
And they say to me, well, but, you're talking 20, 30, 40 years ago, and that's not so. I mean, Father Foxhaven abused a 16-year-old girl in August, September, and October of 2018.
Steubenville, Ohio, where Dean Martin's from.
Ohio, yeah. And sentenced to 12 years. She's pregnant, so there's going to be a child.
Dry cold weather sticking
Jesus.
around through the weekend and into next.
Let me go right back to you, and what I'm going to say is, what do you bring us current? What's going on now? Are you still involved in things? I'm going to ask you, are there any priests that you know of who have been arrested? Any current allegations? Anything going on now? Because again, they just seem to. I was talking to somebody earlier about Eileen Weissman, and where is she? She was at the provincial house and move around, and then she was working. I know they shipped her off to Rome when she left the cathedral. They did that for a while.
Now, keeping you connected with the latest news. This is Talk Radio 680 WCBM and WCBM.com.
Good evening, I'm Michael Filippelli in the 680.
All right, this might be our longer break. Hold on one second.
About 20 survivors gathered at Pearl Harbor today to pay tribute to the thousands of men lost in the Japanese attack 77 years ago today. They joined dignitaries, active duty troops, and members of the public in observing a moment of silence at 7:55 a.m., the time the bombing began, December 7, 1941. The youngest of the survivors are now in their mid-90s. Still, most stood to salute the national anthem. This year, no survivor from the USS Arizona attended the ceremony. None of the men were able to make the trip to Hawaii. In the years since the Asian longhorn tick was officially spotted in New Jersey, it's expanded to 8 more states, including Virginia now. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say the full public health and agricultural impact of the tick is yet unknown, but can transmit known diseases and cause massive infestation. Female Asian longhorn tick can reproduce asexually, laying up to 2,000 eggs at a time. Tick has also been spotted here in Maryland, West Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, New York, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. And Johns Hopkins University says the website error has stopped 18 sexual misconduct complaints filed online from reaching its Title IX office since 2016. School is facing protests over how it handles such complaints. More than 100 students marched on campus yesterday, calling for quicker and more transparent responses. Hopkins says it's working with campus security and technology to fix the problem and update crime laws. In downtown Baltimore, 38 degrees. I'm Michael Filippelli, 680 WCBM News.
Yes, some of it's pretty.
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, but there's something we can do about it. Each year, thousands of people participate in the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Out of the Darkness community walks. raising awareness and letting people know they're not alone. Join us on November 3rd at Rash Field, Inner Harbor, as we walk to fight suicide. Funds raise support research, education, advocacy, and support for those affected by suicide. Remember, suicide prevention starts with everyday heroes like you. Register or donate today at afsp.org/Paul.
No, I know. But there are some others.
And I'm going to say we're going to go right to the callers.
Two different things. Don't combine them. They have nothing to do with each other.
We're going to go right to a caller. Did I tell you guys it flies by? It's why they've been asking me to do 2 hours. I'm going to need to get you back.
Review their medical history and answer questions. Patients leave initial consultations educated and more.
Hey folks, we will be right back. We're on a commercial break right now. We're going to be right back, and we're going to dive right back into this a little bit. Let us know where you're weighing in from. You know, some of you I know, and I know where you're living. Joan, I think you're down in Florida, if I recall. So we've got folks from all over the country, and I need to know where you are. Thoughts on this conference of bishops that came up? I mean, they voted on nothing. They were basically told...
They were shut down by the Pope.
Shut down by the Pope.
They were literally
and what were they going to vote on? Did they even talk about they were going to vote? What was the...
They were supposed to vote on something that they were going to do about this sexual abuse. And
okay.
Of course, the Pope pulled the plug. That was his one chance to come, forward.
Should we talk about Rome? You heading out? Okay. Should we talk about Rome? Isn't it... Do you want to talk about Rome? So what I'll ask you is, how far does this go?
It was proven with this conference that it goes to the top. It's protected.
That's a great answer.
It protects the church. Exactly. I don't know why I thought this was going to be different.
I did too, and I did too. When he picked up his bags and got back on the bus, and I realized, and he's a Jesuit, and I was like, this is a guy who's going to really, I agree with you. I agree with you, Mary Ellen. How far does this go? All right. We're going to go right to a caller. I've got 2 of them in the queue. And then I'm going to come back, and again, I want to make sure. And I'm so sorry. This just really flies by between the commercials, but I've tried to really stir. I think we've stirred the pot.
Rocket Mortgage is simple, so you can understand the details and be sure you're getting the right mortgage. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. Visit rocketmortgage.com today. Licensed in all 50 states, equal housing lender, NMLS number 33.
Some radio stations put their
Here we go, guys.
You can talk around the clock. Stay connected and informed on Talk Radio 680.
Hey, Ross.
WCBM and WCBM.com.
Just look at it. Hi, everybody. Keep the comments coming. Right now, we can't talk to you, but stay tuned, okay?
And now more of the Bob Paff Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and worldwide at WCBM.com.
Hey folks, Bob Paff here. Welcome back. We've got a riveting show here. I've got Teresa Lancaster and Gloria Larkin in the studio with me, and we're talking about the keepers. We're talking about the sexual abuse that's been going on in this church. And one of the things we said before is, how far this has gone back. We're gonna go to a caller. I got a couple people in the queue. Anita, can you put that caller through? Hi, you're with Bob Paff. You were on the air. Who's this, please? Hello, Mary. What's your question for us, Mary? Okay, we'll talk about that. So it's your position and your statement here, and I've got the ladies here with me. We'll talk about that Father Maskell was cleared and had nothing to do with her death. Is that right? Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, my God. Well, the world's got problems, Mary. Listen, thank you for calling in. We're very limited on our time. Really appreciate you listening, and I appreciate that, and we're going to try to touch on that a little bit. Right now, where I want to go is we want to talk about, and this woman says that Sister Kathy's body was exhumed, and it was proven that Maskell, I don't know how you prove he had nothing to do with it, even if he didn't...
It's Father Maskell's body was exhumed, and they draw DNA from Father Maskell, and it didn't match the DNA on what I think was a cigarette butt found at the location of Sister Kathy's body.
Okay.
And I never thought that Maskell himself did the murder. It's my belief that he was behind it somehow.
I agree with you. And so what this caller, it sounded like what Mary was saying, unless I was hearing it incorrectly, is Maskell didn't kill her. And there's really been no accusation that he himself, but the implication is his brother was a cop, that he had something to do with it. Am I saying that right?
That's true.
And I believe that. I got to tell you, I've watched this series, and why wouldn't he? I mean, she knew too much. She was ready to come forward, and then she died. I mean, come on. She's a 26-year-old woman who was probably healthy as a horse, and now she's dead. Exactly. It was not a coincidence. She wasn't suffering from some kind of illness. So, Mary, thank you for calling, and I appreciate that. I don't think any of us were saying that Maskell killed her. I think what we're saying is Maskell knew about it. It was part of the cover-up. He had something to do with it. Money, it was not circumstantial. I mean, come on, folks, really. Watch the show. Watch the show and look at the evidence that's out there. I want to go back. Teresa, I want to start with you. How far back does this go, or how far does this go? How wide is this net? This isn't just Baltimore. We talked about Los Angeles. We talked about Portland, Oregon. We talked about Los Angeles. Does this go back to the Vatican? And what's the Pope's responsibility and complicity in this whole thing?
This clearly goes back to the Vatican all the way up to the Pope. And that was proven this last summer when the bishops in Baltimore wanted to meet and vote on something they could possibly do about this crisis, and the Pope pulled the plug on that completely. He is up to it into his neck, it is my belief, and some of his people in Rome have even said that he knew, and he moved people around.
Well, this DiNardo, I've read about this Cardinal DiNardo's come out, but DiNardo's also doesn't have clean hands. I mean, this guy, too, has been accused of his own, if I've read some studies, right?
Right, I've read that, too. But let's look into it a little bit further.
Right.
Because usually where there's smoke, there's fire.
I agree with it. Well, here's the confusing part about it, too. How do all these dioceses, they're not self-regulated. They can't move or breathe or genuflect or make a sign of the cross without Rome.
All the orders come from Rome.
All the orders come from Rome. And so whatever's done, the final decisions and all of that comes out of Rome. And
the curious thing, Bob, is that while the orders come out of Rome, all of the finances supposedly are local. So once this starts coming out and is public and lawsuits happen, you find that dioceses start to claim bankruptcy. And they can no longer pay the survivors what they are due because now they're bankrupt. Of course, they still own the churches. They still own all of the
Catholic Church, Gloria, is one of the wealthiest corporations.
Right.
You look at the royal family in England, I think is way up there, but you look at the Catholic Church and look at the land that they own, look at the art that they own, right?
The buildings.
The buildings that they own, the real estate. I mean, we just talked about it. Boston sold $65 million of real estate to help pay out $85 million in lawsuits.
And Rome didn't contribute to that.
Rome had nothing to do with that final final payoff. So saying all this, what do we do? I mean, how do we? What do the two of you think? And Teresa, you were there, and if I'm going to turn the floor to you. We've got 2 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. If you want to share your personal experiences, if you want to share, you said something to me, and I hope you don't mind me repeating this because I can't get it out of my head now. I'm not upset with you for saying this with me, but it was a very graphic term. Folks out there, you said to me that Father, and I'll never forget this, that Father Maskell used the altar as an OBGYN table.
Absolutely. The altar in the chapel at Archbishop Keogh High School.
Oh, my God.
Performed OBGYN exams on that regularly.
And that was also part of the keepers, right? That he would say, because he would say, I have to do this. Basically, God's telling me to do this. You've been a bad girl.
Right. And it was a way to cleanse you.
Cleanse you.
Yeah.
Oh my God! All right, so we've got a minute, and then we're going to come back to all this kind of stuff. Teresa, where do you want to take us? What do you want, folks, in the time that we've got left that are out there listening to it? And I got to tell you, ladies, and I'm so grateful to you. And we've got a photographer in the studio with us too. Mary Ellen Otter's come in here to capture some of this. We've elevated it this week. we've raised the bar a little bit this week. People are talking about it more.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to see happen is the investigation for the Attorney General in the state of Maryland to follow what the lead of Pennsylvania.
Well, Pennsylvania's doing.
Absolutely, because to hold the church accountable in every step of the way, not to trust the church to be transparent. It's impossible for them to have transparency.
They're in too deep to be. And so I read this, Gloria. It's a great point about transparency. It's like if you're in the thick of it, how do you maintain any objectivity? We're going to come right back. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show on WCBM. Folks, we'll be right back.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't say we'd like to see 4 or 5 of them nailed up against the trees in the woods somewhere. I think that'd be a little strange.
What I'd like to talk, I think it's important to get into your faith, and because that was a question that I personally had. You and I talked about it on the phone, but I would like to talk to the two of you. I'll set it up. I'll talk about my faith has gotten me through a lot of times, and I've questioned a lot of things, and I've walked out of the cathedral. I've walked out of Mass like the last 3 weeks in a row. Part of the reason is Monsignor Roy is there, and he was implicated in the keepers too. He's the Monsignor of the cathedral. Once you know a lot of this stuff, there's no putting the horse back in the barn.
Did you hear about the 9 cents thing that some people are starting?
No.
Don't give what you normally give when you go to church. Every time you go to church, 9 cents, no more. Just
9 cents.
A nickel and
Really?
4 pennies, and that's it. Because that'd be a lot for them to carry around, and it won't give them much.
And now more of the Bob Paff
Here we go, guys.
Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and worldwide at WCBM.com.
Folks, you're back with the Bob Paff Show. Again, we've got Gloria Larkin and we've got Teresa Lancaster in here, and I'm so grateful for them coming in and sharing their story, sharing the horror story and what continues to happen, what continues to go on. And one of the questions that I want to know, if you're sitting out there and you're listening to this, let me share this with you right now. I was molested by a Catholic priest when I was 16 years old. A lot of you are probably dropping your phones right now. You're watching me on Facebook Live and you're listening to me, and my friends are having wine parties listening to this. I was molested by a Catholic priest when I was 16 years old. And I'll leave it at that at this point. I consider myself one of the lucky ones. And when I say that, I wasn't raped. I wasn't made to do evil and nasty things to him. It was a one-time occurrence. I remember it like it was yesterday. And being 16 wasn't yesterday for those of you who know me. I got out of there. Never told my parents, never told my friends. But again, I remember it like it was yesterday. And what I've lived with, I have to tell you, I have lived with, call it guilt. Call it survivor's guilt. I probably wasn't the first, and I probably wasn't the last. Would you say that? I mean, it wasn't a fluke thing that this priest decided to put his hands on me.
Absolutely. They never stop at one. Never. Doesn't.
And I got to tell you, folks, I was a good-looking 16-year-old boy, and so I was probably a predator for a lot of these things because I think, star athlete, teacher's pet, people that are out there, people that are sociable, people that are popular, whatever, easy to gravitate toward, right?
In some cases.
In some cases.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
trouble. Great point. And so those kids that are struggling, that are maybe seeking that love, and that those kind of people, those predators, those pedophiles will prey on the ones who are maybe having a troubled family life.
Of course, that's when you go to them
Great
for
point.
counseling. That was the whole start of what
Great
happened.
point. And I do remember reading all that. God. All right, so let's talk about faith. And so when I say that to you, and I just dropped that bomb on you about me being molested by a Catholic priest, my faith has gotten me through the worst times of my life, and I still, but I look at my relationship with God really as one-on-one. But Teresa, I didn't live through the hell that you and Gloria lived through, and Linda Taberzi and PK Hill and all these folks that are out there. I didn't live through what you lived through. How do you deal with that? Where are you right now with your faith? I'm going to ask you both that, but let's start with you, Teresa.
I just believe in the golden rule.
The golden rule.
Yeah, I like to treat people the way I would like to be treated. I'm a helper. I would like to help people, lend a listening ear, do whatever I can to help people that are down. But faith, I'm a logical person. I'm a scientific person. And
were you always that way, or did this abuse change that for you?
The abuse opened my eyes in a lot of ways. As a child, all the way up to when I was abused, I believed everything. I believed all the sacraments and the gowns and the Eucharist.
So you bought into all the pomp and the circumstance and, right? The pagan symbols, I like to refer to them, all the stuff.
Right. Now with a logical, educated brain.
Yeah.
I can't look at that stuff.
And by the way, Teresa's an attorney, so I want you to know that, and I credit you because you've gone back, because you've devoted a large part of your life to helping, to doing a lot of pro bono work and helping survivors of this abuse. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. And prior to being an attorney, I was into social work for a time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people that do need help out there, and that is what I can do here on this earth to help people is my religion.
So would you say, is it fair to say that something good has come out of this, Teresa Lancaster? Would you say that to our listeners out there, that some good has come out of this? Not that you'd want it to happen again, and it was horrific, and it's all that people need to pay, and some people need to burn in hell for it. I'm sorry, folks. But would you say that some good has come out of this as to what you're doing? Are you helping people?
Yeah, I'm helping people, but I believe I would have gotten into that field 20 years earlier had I
Really?
been abused. I have two brothers a doctor, another brother's a lawyer. I wanted to become a doctor, actually, and help people in that manner. But by the time I got my head together and came to terms with the abuse, law was there, and I gave it my best shot, and that's where I am right now. I believe I would have been much more help to people and the community had I never been abused.
So that derailed what that original plan was for you. And so that too, Teresa, they took something away from you, didn't they?
Very much so. Yes, they did. And it's a weight that you carry every day. I mean, there isn't a day.
Yeah, there's not a day that goes by that you don't live with this. We've got about a minute. Gloria, talk to us about your faith.
I'm a very spiritual person. I have a personal relationship with God.
Okay.
But I do not participate in any organized religion. I think there are money.
You don't go to church. You're not a part-time Catholic or whatever.
I will never step foot.
You don't go to church for Christmas or Easter or any of those things. No.
No.
Okay.
No. Thanks to the priest.
And that's what did it for you. That's what. And before that, would you say too? Like we all said, listen, I was an altar boy.
I was raised
the pomp and the circumstance and the pageantry, and I call them pagan symbols.
Right.
All the statuary, you know what I mean? I bought into all that. I was drinking all that Kool-Aid.
Yes, absolutely.
I consider being a priest. I think I had a conversation earlier with somebody. I think every little boy and every little girl, if you grew up Catholic, I went up to Northeast Seminary for a couple. I thought the seminarians had a great life. They played basketball. And it was until I realized you couldn't have a family and that celibacy thing got in the way that I thought it was just not for me. But looking at it from the outside, it looked like a pretty good deal. So, folks, we're going to be right back. We'll wrap this up in a little bit. Please give us a call. I've got somebody holding on, and I promise I'll take your call when we come back. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show on WCBM. We've got Teresa Lancaster and Gloria Larkin in the studio with us. We'll be right back.
Looking for ways to increase your sales, motivate your team,
you okay?
Somebody said relationships, or become a more effective, persuasive, and passionate speaker? Tired of doing the same old things and expecting a different result? Let Bob Paff and his Communicating to Win strategy help you become the best you can be to lead a more peaceful, productive, and engaging life.
I'll go right to the caller.
All your personal and professional goals. Who's on your team?
Yeah, I'll take PK.
And business. Order Bob's best-selling book on Amazon.com or go to bobpath.com.
If you're looking for a wonderful dining experience, look no further than Cipriana Restaurant. Chef Maria produces the city's most authentic Greek and Cypriot food, while her husband Vaso makes sure that you have an outstanding dining experience. Born in Cyprus but rooted here in Baltimore, the couple has been feeding local food lovers for over 27 years. The menu packed with delicious items such as the chef's creamy hummus, fresh pita bread, always made from scratch, the Legion Fields roasted lamb.
This is Linda Perosi right here.
What's that?
This is Linda Perosi.
That's Linda?
Yes.
Linda Taberzi, and this is probably PK. We're going to take her next. Okay.
Cipriana boasts an award-winning kitchen and a warm and welcome setting with your choice of inside or patio seating. Complimentary parking is available. For reservations, call 410-837-7482 or visit Cipriana.com. Cipriana Restaurant, where guests become family.
That's going to need if this is our last block. When we come back from the commercial, is this it for us?
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. But there's something we can do
okay.
about it.
So we got about 5 minutes on this one?
About 5 minutes?
On this one?
Walks, raising awareness and letting people know they're not alone. Join us
we got about 4 minutes.
Inner Harbor, as we walk to fight suicide. Funds raise support research, education, advocacy, and support for those affected by suicide. Remember, suicide prevention starts with everyday heroes.
We're coming into the last block. I'm going to take one call, but I want to make sure that whatever you want to cover, what I'm going to do is I'll throw it to you to wrap up. What do you want people to know? We're running out of time. I'm happy to get you back in, but I want to take one call. I've had two people that have been on hold for a long time. I knew this was going to happen, which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
When you get to the end, you won't have time for me. You say it. Grandparents. Grandparents, warn your grandkids.
Grandparents warn your grandkids.
Grandparents warn their kids too.
Basically telling folks to be careful out there.
Be careful, no, be careful in the schools.
In the schools.
Free municipal bonds by Henyon and Walsh. To get a free guide to municipal bonds, call
It's true.
1-833-9833.
Basically, you don't want to be alone with these folks.
Because it's going on right now. Even though we're
Securities
talking
offered
about
through
it, there
Henyon
are
and
kids
Walsh,
being abused
member of
right now in this
FINRA
country all over
Investing
the
in bonds
Mr.
involves
Paff.
risk,
Yes, sir.
including possible loss of
What
principal.
what keeps you
Income
going
may be
back to
subject
church
state, local,
and
or
bringing your
federal
kids to
alternative
church
minimum
after hearing all these
tax.
stories?
Interest rates rise, bond prices
You know,
fall,
it's a
and
it's a
rates
great
fall.
question, and maybe like these last few weeks when I walked out, it's kind of challenged me. But I think what it is my relationships just really one-on-one with God, and I feel when I go, of course I can do it in my living room or my basement or my car, but I feel like very traditional in that way. But I'm not afraid to walk out, and if I think somebody's not sincere, and I think my daughter said to me, and we're on, I got to be careful what I say on here because I'm still on Facebook Live. My daughter made a comment to me the other day about a priest and said, she's 16 years old, and she said, I don't think he should be a priest. I don't think he likes his job. Out of the blue, during Mass. She said that to me. She picked up, because she also too, but we're very close. And it means a lot to her. And she was an altar server, but she's also very smart, very perceptive. And it's like, this guy's really not into what he's peddling.
All these gifts are free just for attending, plus an opportunity to
The
network
question of
with
celibacy
like-minded
has come
investors.
up.
Text
Yeah.
to 484848. That's flip to
Right.
484848 to
Right.
get your free wholesale kit now.
Are the media
Yeah.
really concerned about the power of government? It's the
Right.
show for people who think for themselves. Are they concerned with the fact
They're pedophiles.
Donald Trump is elected president? Why are so
Yeah.
many of them progressives?
Yeah.
Why are so many of them Democrats?
Yeah.
The Democrat Party's all about the power of government.
Yeah.
We're a relative
It's a good point.
handful of people control an army of bureaucrats and compel the nation to conform to their ideology.
Well, I'm not going to be a fan of the Archdiocese. You guys already weren't. Here we go.
And now more of the Bob Paff Show on Talk Radio 680 WCBM and worldwide at WCBM.com.
Hey, folks, you're back with the Bob Paff Show. We're talking about the keepers. We're talking about the sexual abuse in the church. We're talking about whether or not Archbishop Lori can, quite frankly, be transparent and be accountable. We're going to go to a call. I'm going to take the call. I want to take the question really quick. We've only got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I want to come back here in fairness to my guest and close it out. So, Anita, can we take that call? Do we have PK on the line? PK, are you there? Hey, PK, can you listen? I hate to cut you. We got about 4 minutes left. Can you throw the question or comment out to us so we can deal with that? By nuns. They're both nodding their heads. Yeah, in agreement with you. Oh, my God. And you and I chatted about that, and I think what I'm going to need to do, and thank you so much for that call and that comment. I can't even, I've got 2 daughters. I mean, this stuff really is. We're going to have to do a follow-up show on this. We really. And you and I talked about that, but thank you so much. And, the sympathy going out to you, and I just can't even imagine, and I'm sure the ladies sitting here with me, the horror of that whole thing. So, PK, we'll be in touch, and thanks for calling in.
Thanks, PK.
So one of the things, Teresa, that we were talking about, for those of you who are out there, and if you think that letting priests get married is going to fix it, certainly, we talked about, it would help because you'll get an infiltration of people that are, I use the word normal, they're not pedophiles. These people are not homosexuals that are assaulting these kids. They're pedophiles.
That's right, they're pedophiles, a homosexual or a regular person.
Heterosexual.
They're attracted to other adults. I mean, it's a very healthy situation that
right.
both of those groups are in. The pedophiles The pedophiles only want children.
So, folks, let's be clear on that. That's really a great point. These are pedophiles. These are not gay people. Now, there might be some gay people certainly in there. These are not homosexuals. By and large, these people are pedophiles because, how old were you when this occurred?
I was 16.
16.
Yes.
And so we just had a caller that say she was impregnated by a priest at age 12 and had to have a hysterectomy and then was never able to have children. So, right, they're pedophiles. They're preying on these children. So while allowing priests to get married would help, it would take a long time because you've got now this conclave, if I can use this word, of pedophiles.
Yes, you do. You got to clean house.
You got to clean house first,
yes.
Right? And it's going to take years to clean house. We don't have a lot of time left. I want to get you back. Please promise me. I hope I was nice to you and you were comfortable talking. You were great. But what do you want people to know? If they're out there listening right now, Gloria, let me go to you. What do you want our listeners to know? And I talked to Randy, and I'm going to share some things. We got a minute. What do you want?
Now's a safe time to come forward. It's time. If you have been abused, please reach out. You can reach out to many organizations, and you even have safety in reporting it to Maryland's Attorney General if you're in the state of Maryland.
The Attorney General has a website, I know, that he set up, right? You probably don't want to go to the Archdiocese with your complaint.
Do not go to the Archdiocese.
Right?
No. And no matter what state you're in, there's someone to listen to you.
All right, we got 30 seconds. Gloria, thank you. I'm going to close it out with you, Teresa. What do you want?
Transparency. Release the records. Please let me see Father Maskell's records. Let them out.
Those records have never been seen?
No, they have never.
All right. Folks, we got 20 seconds. I am so grateful to all of you. You're listening to the Bob Paff Show on WCBM. Again, another terrific show. We're going to have these ladies back because there's so much more we want to talk about. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. We're out of here. We'll see you next week. Take care. Hey, Trish, Facebook. Thank you, guys. Justin Mulcahy. Guys, I'm signing out. Let me know how we did. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.